Hello everyone, this is Kelly and welcome to the Honeybee Stance YouTube channel. Usually we would be having our normal live stream at this time. I am away with my kiddos and so I have made a video sharing some cards that I'm making with the backgrounds that we created on Monday, and so I hope you enjoy. We'll be back to our regular scheduled live streams next week. Thank you. So the first thing that I have done is pulled out a bunch of cardstock, and they're trimmed down to make top folding card bases that are going to coordinate with the stamped backgrounds that we created out of our 3D embossing folders on Monday. You can see all the beautiful paper, and so all that I need to do to start out is take those top folding pieces of paper and score those and fold those down into card bases. So I just use my Score Buddy and my Be Creative bone folder, line them up in there, fold them down, and then they'll all be ready to go. Now for this first wood grain background, I have pulled out some of our new pattern paper from our Pinstripes and Polka Dots paper pad. We have a really pretty chocolate brown pinstripe that's going to be beautiful with this wood grain paper. I'm going to layer the background on top of the pinstripe, and then that all is going to go onto a chocolate brown card base. The sentiment set I'm using is called One of the Guys. I used anti-static powder on the background, and I'm going to pour gold embossing powder over the top of that With Love on Father's Day sentiment, and that gold is going to be really pretty on top of that chocolate brown. So once I get it all sprinkled on and then dusted off again, I can transfer that back into the container, and then we'll heat set this. Once I have the embossing powder all set up and it's all nice and smooth, I can let that dry, let it set up nicely, and then we can layer all of our cardstock together. You can see how beautiful that gold shimmers on top of that wood grain background that we created. I'm first going to use our Be Creative liquid adhesive just to add that pinstripe pattern paper onto the chocolate brown card base and get that all nice and set into place. And then just to add a little bit of something, I'm going to pop up our background that we created with a little bit of foam tape. So I'm going to stretch these all the way across the back of that background, and then I can pull off the backer, line that up onto the card base, and then this card is all done. So super simple, easy masculine card that I have and I can pull out for a Father's Day card. I love that gold embossing powder with the wood grain and then also the pinstripe paper. Now for the next card, I am taking one of the backgrounds that we did in oxide ink. You can see the beautiful kind of watercolory looking trees. They're stamped on to craft cardstock, and I have the Be Still sentiment set. Now what I like to do before I pick out, or while I'm trying to pick out a sentiment, is kind of hold the stamp set over whatever I'm placing the sentiment on to decide, what size sentiment would work best. Do I stamp it directly onto the background, or do I stamp it onto paper and then use the coordinating dies? So that's what I've decided to do with this one. I've chosen a smaller size sentiment because I want all those beautiful trees to really be the star of the show in the background. I am doing embossing powder again. So I used the anti-static powder. I stamped that in our sticky embossing ink, and I'm going to pour the same gold embossing powder over the top of the sentiment. I can tap it off and then we'll heat set the sentiment. Now I'm using the coordinating dies to cut out this sentiment, and so I have trimmed it off of the scrap sheet of paper I had, pulled out my bitty buzz cutter, and I love this little mini die machine, especially for sentiments and small images, because it can rest right on the side of my desk and then I can pull it out to use it without having to either pull out my big die machine or go across the craft room to use it. So I'm going to attach my beautiful kind of blue green colored trees, and then you can see that coordinating a sentiment is going to be beautiful, and it's not so large and big that it takes away from the background. You can still see all the details of those pretty trees back there. I've used our Be Creative liquid adhesive to glue down my tree background. And next I'm going to pop up that sentiment with the narrow foam strips. So I like these little narrow foam strips, especially for sentiments, because they're so narrow. They can fit behind some of the smallest, narrowest little sentiment strips. And so it's just a way to add a little bit dimension to your card front without a whole lot of bulk. And those little narrow strips make it easy to hide all that adhesive. I'm going to pop this sentiment right in the center of my card with my reverse tweezers. And then just to add a little bit of pizzazz to the background, I'm going to add some coordinating pearls. These pearls are from our Pacific Northwest pearl set. There are 210 pearls in each little package, and there are 3 sizes of each shade. And this really pretty blue green is perfect with my card base and with all those pretty trees. So I'm going to get my pearls tucked back in here. I'm going to give my area a little bit of cleanup, and then I'm ready to move on to the next background. For the next background, I have taken one of the Distress Oxide backgrounds, and you can see it has colored in or stamped in the negative space. So what is in the background? Now I'm taking that same sentiment set, and so you can see my head getting in the way. I'm really looking over this background to decide what sentiment I want to go where, and I get right over the top. This is the part that you normally don't see in the live streams because I've kind of picked everything out. But this sentiment from the Be Still sentiment set is the perfect fit up there in that watercolory kind of messy area there to the top. So I've added my anti-static powder tool again with my sticky embossing ink, and I am going to use the gold embossing powder again. I think that gold is so pretty with all of these greens and blues. I can sprinkle that right over the top, and then we're going to add that really pretty sentiment right there onto our faux watercolored background. Now, just to add just a little something different and a little pizzazz to this card, I am taking that background die and I'm trying to decide how I can use our new shield layering frames. And so I'm holding them up. I'm trying to see what it would look like if it was cut out. I've got some green cardstock there that I'm using to pair with everything. And I've decided I'm going to cut that largest kind of shield design out of that biggest frame background. Okay, I have my really dark green shield layering background cut. And so normally you probably wouldn't see this part in a crafter's video, but I am measuring the inside of that green shield and I'm going to cut down the tree background in order to fit inside. So you saw me take the ruler out. I measured from side to side and from top to bottom to see how small I need to cut down my tree background to fit inside of that layering frame. So I'm kind of holding it up here to see if I need to trim any more off of that area. I need to take off just a little bit more for it to fit inside the way that I want it to fit. And so this is a really easy way to use, your stamped backgrounds or your stenciled backgrounds and then put them inside of a frame or something like that. But you can see I am just holding it up to the green frame, taking it off, taking it to my trimmer, and then trimming off the areas that I need. Sometimes a little bit, sometimes a lot. But you can see this trimmer is really nice. It cuts out really small little areas, and then I got it just the way that I wanted it. If I cut it down anymore, you won't be able to see the craft border around the edge. You could totally cut that off and it would be fine and make that smaller to go inside of the frame, but I really wanted it to look like it was layered. And so now I've got that cut down and all ready to fit onto my shield layering frame. I'm going to layer this onto a craft card base, and you can see how pretty that's all going to go together now. Now all I need to do is add all of my layers onto my card base. So I'm going to add that beautiful kind of forest green frame, And next I'm going to add my tree background with a little bit of foam tape. It's going to give it some dimension and pop it up off of that pretty green shield layering frame. We'll add that on there, and then this card is going to be all ready to go with just a simple sentiment, and that green shield frame really makes this card pop. For the last card, I am stepping out of my comfort zone a little bit with this mica spray. This is Distress Mica Spray. It has a shimmer to it. I have taken the nozzle out of the bottle and I'm tapping it to get little drips onto the background. And then I'm going to add some Gonzai Tombi Starry Colors. This is white gold, which is a silver shimmer onto the background. And so all I've done is spritz water into the little well of color, stir it up with my paintbrush, and then I can flick it on. So this is going to be shimmery and look like little shimmery snowdrops over that blue tree background. Next, I'm choosing a holiday sentiment, and this is from the Tag Your It holiday edition. I'm going to stamp Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas onto coordinating cardstock that matches the card base. I am laying down some anti-static powder using my sticky embossing ink, and then I am going to use platinum embossing powder. It's going to go more with the silvery feel of the Christmas background. I just need to trim down my little sentiment panel here, and it's going to stretch all the way across the background that I've created with the embossing folder. So I'm just going to lay that down. I lined it up. Sorry, my head got in the way there. I just wanted to make sure it was nice and straight, and then any excess that hangs off the edge I can just trim off with my scissors. I'm adding a few of our brand new Adventure Awaits gem stickers, and then all of our cards are all ready to go. You can see I've got all 4 that we've created today laid out here. And then here is a close-up look at all of the finished cards. Very simple, but I love that watercolory looking design for those backgrounds. Thank you for joining me today. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll be back with our regular lives next week, and I hope to see you then. Bye-bye.